Hi everyone, Stjepan here. In this week's chess meditations I'm going to talk about time management, a very important subject for chess players and one which is often overlooked. Besides tactics and strategy and learning new things in chess and trying to eliminate your mistakes, time management is another great segment of the game which, if improved, could bring you great results. This saying by Manuel Lasker is, of course, very famous. He said that if you see a good move, you should look for a better one. But I've put it here because I want to challenge it in a way. I think that even though it's very important to try and find the best move, you need to find the balance in between thinking for too long and taking too long to find the perfect move and playing fast. So, okay, to start off with, I'm going to talk about pacing your play. Very often lower rated players, and I've seen this in my club, I've seen this at tournaments, if you walk past the stronger boards, they are at the end of the game, they are going to have far less time on the clock, and also the lower rated players tend to finish the game much sooner. Now if you have 90 minutes for 40 moves and then you get another 30 minutes for the rest of the game, isn't it stupid to finish your game with, I don't know, 60 minutes on the clock? And let me tell you, more often than not, you are going to hear players who lost the game because they were in zeitnot saying, I lost, I was in zeitnot. But you rarely hear people saying, I lost the game because I didn't use enough time. And I myself have lost a dozen games with more than an hour remaining. Now, what does that mean? What's worse, zeitnot or not using your time? I think I've lost more games because I didn't use my time properly and didn't use enough of it than that I lost because of zeitnot. So the first thing is pacing. Now, it's really hard to pace yourself, and you can't really say, okay, if I have 90 minutes for 40 moves, I'm going to use 2.5 minutes for a move or something like that. You can't really do that because there are stages of the game, there are moves that are going to be simpler to find, and there are moves that are going to be harder to find, and there are positions which are critical and positions which are fairly obvious, and your move isn't going to decide the game. So in the next few steps, I'm going to try and explain how to pace yourself. The first thing which I would like to emphasize here, if you are an improving player and you study chess, let's say during the week you read one chess book, you solved 50 or 20 tactics, and you got some new ideas in your mind. If you don't take time during the game to consider these new ideas, then you can't really expect to be applying them. And if there is a gap between you learning new things and applying them for the first time, then there is a huge chance that they are going to evaporate. So my advice would be that whatever you've been working on lately before your game, try to force the application of that new knowledge during the game. And very often it's going to happen by chance, and very often you're going to say, oh, this is exactly what I was working at on my last training session. Just try to apply your knowledge, because very often if you learned something new, then applying it is going to take serious observation, and you're going to try to find the opportunity to apply your knowledge. And if you play fast, then obviously you can't expect that to happen, and your knowledge will be wasted. The most important point in time management during a chess game is finding critical positions, and this can't be emphasized enough. I think that many players, okay, let's just put some moves on the board. Let's say knight f3, knight c6, you play something normal, bishop to b5, a6, bishop a4, and now your opponent plays a move which is a book move, but you haven't really seen it. You know that it's not too bad, but you're not sure what to do. Let's find the move. Let's say he plays bishop to c5. That's a very rare move. Now this move doesn't really do a whole lot. It's not really as provocative. You might not be sure how to continue, but in positions like these, and it doesn't have to be the opening, it could be a slightly confusing move in the early middle game or something. I've seen players waste 20 minutes or 30 minutes on a position like this. Now, of course, bishop c5 is a known move and it has been played, but many people who are not familiar how to play the Ruy Lopez will not have seen it by the time they see it on the board, and they might spend a lot of time. So taking your time in critical positions is much more important. Now, this will come at a cost. And if this happens during your game, my advice would be just make sure that there are no tactical blunders you could fall for. Make sure that the bishop can't just take on f2 or something horrible that could happen. And continue to play even though you don't know the position, because there's a huge chance that your opponent prepared this move for you. And if he prepared it, that means that he's ready for the best response. Okay, so if you spend half an hour looking for the best response, then your opponent is going to play immediately and continue his play. And even though this move isn't the perfect move, bishop c5 isn't the ideal move, even though you might hold a slight edge, by looking for the perfect move, you will have spent half an hour and your opponent is playing instantly. So your tiny advantage is going to evaporate during the middle game because you simply won't have enough time. So I would advise you to save time for critical positions. How to find the critical position? Well, this isn't really the subject of the video. Finding critical positions is going to be another chess meditations video, and that's one of the key things for players to improve. And if you manage to realize when the position is critical, meaning that the game is just about to drastically change, or you're at a crossroads which either lead to you winning, your opponent winning, a draw, if you manage to recognize when a critical position occurred on the board, then you are obviously going to be a much better player. It's as if somebody gave you a textbook and said white to play and win, something like that. It's not always that obvious, but critical positions do decide the outcome of the game. So spend your time in critical positions. If you're not sure what the critical position is, if you sense danger or a great opportunity to do something to improve your position, then consider that a critical position. And this in time will help. Of course, after the game, you can analyze the game and find out whether your decision to call that a critical position was wrong or not. So my advice would be to use the majority of your time in the positions which you consider critical. If your opponent played a slightly strange move like bishop to c5 and now you spend 20 minutes to castle, well, you didn't really gain anything. I'm not sure what the best move here is, by the way. There might be like 0.2, 0.25, 0.3 differences, but it doesn't really matter. Would you rather have half an hour on the clock or 0.2 instead of 0.0? I mean, it doesn't really matter. My next point is to use the openings to save time. Now, of course, if you studied the Roy Lopez perfectly for a year, then you would be well acquainted with the move bishop to c5, and then you would react instantly. And just like that, you've saved 20 minutes, which you would have otherwise spent perhaps during the game. So the opening is a great way to prepare, is a great thing to prepare in advance. And then you are going to be sure that for the first 5, 10 or 15 moves, depending on how good you are in the opening, you're going to be playing fast and you're going to be saving time. Conversely, if your opponent is unfamiliar with the opening, then imagine a situation in which you know the first 15 moves of the Roy Lopez and this variation with bishop to c5, and your opponent knows nothing. That means that he is either going to have to come up with the theory of the Roy Lopez for black by himself during 90 minutes, or he's going to play bad moves. In either case, you're going to be better. So one of the best things to do for time management is to know your openings in advance. Don't get into a situation over the board in which you are lost and out of book on move 3, which happened to me against the French defense, where I played the Tarrasch. It's e4, e6, d4, d5, knight to d2, the Tarrasch defense, the Tarrasch variation of the French defense, and my opponent played h6. I had no idea what to play against that move, and I did this mistake. I spent 20 minutes and played a normal looking move. I mean, all moves were okay. I knew that if I don't know the move, it must be a sideline, hence it's not the best move, hence it's not as good for black as the normal moves, so I spent my time for nothing. Okay, win the endgame in advance. This is sort of stretched and you can't really make sure to do that, but the endgame is another part, another stage of a chess game which you can learn in advance. And obviously, if you enter a king and pawn endgame and you know the rule of the square, you know the opposition, you know triangulation, you know king and pawn versus 2 pawns, you know all of these and you've played them 100 times, then you're obviously going to be much faster than your opponent. If during the game, let me just set up something on the board just to give you an example. Okay. So if during your tournament game you get this position, and you've played king and pawn versus king 100 times, then you don't have to think. You know that you need to keep the opposition, you need to win this game, and there is a chance of your opponent drawing if you misplay it, of course. So knowing stuff like this will save you a lot of time. If you enter an endgame in which you have 10 minutes on the clock, your opponent has 10 minutes on the clock, your opponent doesn't know the opposition and you do, then you are going to win the game because your opponent blundered, or B, you're going to draw the game with 10 minutes on the clock because you know everything. So learning the endgame in advance is a very important thing, and it definitely shouldn't be overlooked. Now you can do that by simply practicing. I would advise every improving chess player to study the endgame every day, because the higher you get, the more games are going to be decided during the endgame. And why wouldn't you have an advantage over your opponent if you can get it? Don't search for the perfect move. Now, this is slightly contradictory to Lasker's saying, but I've analyzed this game on the channel. It was during the Zadar Open. I had a great attacking position, and I thought there must be something here. There must be a checkmate or a Greek gift or something. And I ended up spending 45 minutes in a position in which a quiet move was the best move, simply defending a pawn. A quiet move was the best move, and after 45 minutes, I ended up playing the move b6 and simply defending my pawn. At the end of the game, I blundered a whole rook. I blundered a whole exchange because I was in zeitnot. I had 2 minutes on the clock. So obviously, I lost that game because I was searching for the perfect move. It's much better to play the obvious move than to spend 45 minutes. Statistically, you are going to be right more often than wrong, and more often than not, a perfect move won't exist. If you're trying to make a sacrifice work for 45 minutes, and after the game you see that you didn't play it, but it was there, then okay, so what? But that's going to happen 1 out of 10 times. If you spend 45 minutes on something, you are either blind or stupid, or there's no sacrifice there, more often than not. This is a very practical piece of advice. Write down the time remaining or time spent on each move. This is extremely important. After the game, let's get another game on the board. No, this is a stupid move. E4, E5. Let's just find any game. Okay, Anand Carlsen. So take your time and write down on your score sheet each move you and your opponent play. Write down how long it took you to find it. And after the game, after you analyze your game, you're going to have very important data, which when used over a huge pattern of games, will give you important conclusions. So if I see that over a span of 20 games, I used more than 30 minutes for the first 10 moves, then I can conclude that there's something wrong with my openings. If I see the same thing for the endgame, and the endgames were fairly simple, then I know that I have to work on my endgame. Basically, what you should get is spending about 5% of your time on the opening, 90 or 80% of your time on the middle game, and have 10 to 20% of your time left for the endgame. That should be optimal time management during the game. So write down how much time you spent on each move for every single one of your games, even if you play online. Okay, the next point, blitz games. Blitz games might help sharpen your chess, and they are good, of course, as a training method, not optimal, but still not harmful. But one often misconception is that blitz speeds up your play. That couldn't be more wrong. The best blitz players in the world, Magnus Carlsen, Alexei Shirov, Hikaru Nakamura, whoever, they didn't become good blitz players because they played blitz. They became good blitz players because they played slow chess. They applied their knowledge, fortified it, they learned the patterns, and because of that, they are able to use them during a game simply by tapping into their intuition, and they need 1 second to find a tactic. Okay, so playing slow games will speed up your play, not playing blitz or bullet chess. The last point, and this is something I had a problem with, is showing off. So imagine a situation over the board. You have a sacrifice you can play, or you have a very strong move you could play, or your opponent is putting pressure on your position and whatever. and your coach passes by, a very strong player passes by, a beautiful girl passes by, starts to watch at your game, and you just make the move to show off. Especially if it's a good looking move, like I'm going to sacrifice my knight now on e5 because I saw that bishop takes, whatever. You figured something out, and then a beautiful girl passes by your board, starts looking at the board, you just take the pawn because she was there. That it didn't happen to me with a girl, it happened to me with my coach and with one very strong player. I sort of had this desire to impress them, which is completely moronic, and you should never do that. So I'm not sure if it happens to a lot of people. It did happen to me, so now every time I feel an urge to play because somebody might see my move, I just stop and don't play the move for another 5 minutes just to calm myself down and to punish myself for thinking that. So I think it's very important not to show off. Whoever is watching, if that person is important to you, if that person is better than you. I mean, imagine, during the Croatian Cup last year, Vasily Ivanchuk was walking around the tables, and at one point he stopped and looked at my board. I mean, who am I? A guy who is 1,000 points high rated than me, not 800 points high rated than me. Vasily Ivanchuk, one of my biggest idols, stood next to my board and looked at it for 5 seconds. He's probably thinking about something completely different, his own game, but I get so nervous and I have a good move, I want to play it. That's just don't do that. Whoever is watching, just be calm, imagine yourself to be the best, and don't worry about them looking at your game or thinking that you are too slow, too weak, your position is too good, too bad, oh, you need to play this and win. Just ignore those feelings. Obviously those people aren't really thinking about your game, they're just staring at the board. Okay, everybody, I hope this video helped and that it will help your time management. I only have one more tip which I want to share. I find that one of the best exercises for me to improve my speed of play in a good way, not rushing but finding better moves more quickly, is to look at the game, set it on move 20 and try to find the move. Let's take another game. Anish Giri, Magnus Carlsen. You scroll down to move 20. I usually go to move 20 for black, so a5 was played here for black, and now I try to find the move for white. Why is this good for time management? Because you have no clue about this position. You don't know what's going on. First, in order to be able to find the candidate moves and then find the move, you're going to have to evaluate the position, assess the position, find the plan for white, which you have to make the move for, find what black wants to do, find the candidate moves, analyze the candidate moves, and only then come up with the move. If you are able to do that fairly quickly in a game you haven't played, then you are going to be much quicker in your own games. So I would advise doing this as an exercise, a concrete exercise to speed up your play in a good way. Take any game, it doesn't matter what game it is. If the position is already lost on move 20, then win it quickly, or if it's winning, lose it quickly. Just take any game, move 20, try to find the plan, trying to find the move. I think this will improve your play significantly and speed up your play. Thanks very much. I hope this helps. Please let me know what you think. I'm always nervous when doing topics like this one. Once again, thank you very much for the support, for the kind comments I've been getting on the channel. It's much easier to do this when I know that people appreciate my content. Thank you very much once again, and stay tuned for more chess. See you later. Bye bye.